This is Spirit of Sport with
Shannon Spencer
and Kelsey Davis. Join us as we explore the spiritual life, leadership, and sports. Our hope is to offer bread for your journey, wherever you are. In this episode, we will explore the word endure. My understanding of endurance has become more and more complex as I've aged, from being an active athlete to now a retired athlete to now, going for a walk feels like an endurance sport for me. And it might for many people as well. So I say it a little bit jokingly, but I also, honor that endurance looks different for everybody, right?
It's real.
So, back in the day when I was a young athlete, endurance for me, I think about marathon runners. I think about, as a soccer player, our center midfielder. I was a goalkeeper, so endurance was different then too. So I'm curious, Shannon, for you, when you hear the word endurance, what first comes up for you?
My teeth hurt.
Your teeth hurt?
My teeth hurt.
Okay.
Yeah. My first year as playing basketball in college, we had to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and go and run a 6-minute mile on the track. And this is in Boone, so it was cold. And I just remember going back to our apartment after those sessions, and my teeth hurt so bad. And it was all about endurance. It was all about you've got to be able to play 40 minutes, and you've got to, which what we know now is at least the mile doesn't do much for sprinting sports. I hold a little bit of resentment and grudge and bitterness towards that, but I think about that word, and that's I'm like, yeah, my teeth hurt.
Your teeth hurt.
Pain.
I can feel that with you. Yeah, yes. I feel solidarity in that. When I think about endurance and having to push for longer periods of time, like I said, I was a goalkeeper, so when I also had to run for miles and miles and miles and push, try to keep up with the field players. I just think about salt. Like, I was always like, I could taste that, have that iron taste in my mouth and salt on my skin. And yeah, it was pretty intense. When you hear the word endurance for the spiritual life or as a Christian, what comes to mind?
I think for me, because I have somewhat of a negative connotation of endurance just because of the way that it's been used, for me, it feels tiring. It's already the assumption that the spiritual life is tiring, and you've just got to suck it up and do it. And so, what I want to lean into is, there are seasons, moments of our spiritual journey, of our physical journey that are exhausting, and we have to keep showing up, and we have to keep picking ourselves back up. And what I want to believe is what endurance, the goal of endurance is, we can get there from here. It's that kind of understanding and trust in the promise that we have what it takes, and putting that spin of, it's not going to be a cakewalk, but we got to keep showing up. It's the decision making, less the exhaustion part of endurance, but the decision to I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep trying. For me, that's what resonates when I hear that word.
I used to think about endurance in the spiritual life as a singular effort. And when I think about it as an individual, it's been pretty traumatizing. Like, I, Kelsey, need to figure out how to muscle through X, Y, or Z. Even the second letter to Timothy talks about, being good soldiers of Christ and enduring. And if we disown Jesus or disown our faith, that God is going to disown us or something. I mean, it's really difficult theology. I would even say harmful theology. And yet that has been at the center of a lot of Christian theology for a long time. That unless we're sort of muscling our way through it, that, we've given up and we've failed and we're on our own. Mm-hmm. And I just reject that now. I believe that with endurance and the wisdom of endurance, if we look at endurance athletes, think about marathoners or ultras, right? Or Iron men, Iron women, Iron people. The wisdom that I see in these athletes is you see one person racing. What you don't see all the time is the team around that person who is caring for that athlete along the way. Mm-hmm. And so now when I think about endurance, I think it also includes a team, a community of people who share the load of the burden, proper nutrition, rest, backing off. There are times that as endurance athletes, you need to say, you know what? In order to get from here to there, I need to actually scale back on my training. Mm-hmm. I need to kind of quit it for a day. Mm-hmm. Also think about lament as part of endurance. Mm. In order for us to get from here to there and to endure this lifelong journey, we have to have spaces to be able to tell the truth when it's getting really hard to each other. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious how you understand lament as part of this journey of enduring.
I think it's crucial. I think it's integral in it, in that because it is a team. I mean, I don't know who among us has ever competed without being able to recognize that we didn't get to where we are by ourselves. And I think that's the same. I mean, somebody had to tell us the stories of Jesus. Somebody had to introduce us to the Bible. Somebody told us, so that the same is true for our faith walk. The notion of lament, I think for me, is the acknowledgement that we don't have to have it all together because it's not just about us. And the humility in that, I think, actually makes us stronger and gives us the energy to continue showing up, because it does give us, it's permission giving for me, is what that, you can acknowledge that I messed up, you messed up, there's space in that for growth, and I don't know how far we get without doing that, without that practice of lament. And I even think ritualizing lament is important.
And there's a ancient structure to lament as well, and maybe that's a podcast episode for another time. Mm-hmm. But this has been going on for a very long time by many groups of people and individuals, and there's ancient wisdom here. And what lament does is it not only gives voice to the individual but to the community, and keeps us connected to God. Mm-hmm. in our honest truths of what's going on, and that it hurts and there's pain and exhaustion and we're tired.
And it's within our Western society we tend to talk about grief in such clinical terms, but grief is spiritual. I mean, it is the recognition of things die. And we are fortunate that in our tradition, in the Christian tradition, there's meaning in that, but we often aren't given permission to draw on it. We want to sanitize it. We want to clean it up. And so even the rituals that we have after death and the many ways death happens in our lives, we are rarely given the opportunity to understand and be invited to grieve. It's like, oh my gosh, that happened 3 weeks ago. You shouldn't keep crying right now. And it is this notion of grief is not pretty. And for us to have endurance, for us to keep showing up, there are going to be losses. There are going to be torn ligaments. There are going to be bruises and scrapes. There's going to be teammates that come and go. And what is the container that holds all of that so that we can endure to the finish line?
Amen. And in society, we also see groups of people throughout history who have had to endure because of oppression and violence and degradation. And the wisdom of endurance, of weeping, of dancing, of singing, and ultimately, though, of staying together in community. And so how can we as athletes understand that, and as Christians, understand and remember that staying together, this is not something you do on your own. We are people of community. We are people of the corporate. And so how can we lean on each other? How can we turn towards each other, especially in these moments that are difficult, that you just described?
And I think about the Garden of Gethsemane, and Jesus tells the disciples pray, and he goes off and he comes back and they're asleep, and he's disappointed and tells them as such, right? I mean, can you not just for an hour, can you not just pray? This is the only thing I'm asking you to do. The time is now. I need you to pray. And they failed, and yet Jesus comes back, and we have in one of the resurrection appearances where there's restoration and reconciliation, and calls Peter by name. Even the one that denied him 3 times. That there's this movement, this fluidity to an endurance that there's seasons of failure and disappointment and ways that God keeps calling us back in and saying, you can do better, and I need more from you, and it's riding this wave that it's strengthening. That's what endurance is, that every time we keep making the choice to be present, we're strengthened, even if that's in moments of on our knees and not able to do what we know we're being asked of. That I think that's, I keep coming back to permission giving, but I feel like we need to do more of that when we listen to ourselves and what our bodies need and what we know that we need to get to there from here. What are those practices that we need to be given permission to fall into?
And I love that, the giving permission and the really listening to your body and to your soul to get from A to B or from here to there. So I'm curious, as we sort of close out this episode, of, when can endurance be harmful, or how do we make sure that we're discerning what to endure and for how long? Because we have a long history of a lot of different groups of people and individuals being asked to endure for the sake of enduring that's been very harmful in various ways. So how do we discern this?
I think it's not forgetting, again, who we are and whose we are. It is when we honor ourselves as being a child of God, and anything that is being asked of us that is contrary to recognizing that our gift is life. And if it diminishes that, if it diminishes the light that we have, if it diminishes our ability to live as fully as we can in the love and the grace that we've been promised and have to offer and share, then I think that is a red flag. That is when we need to take a step back and seek the wisdom, even if it's not ours. And again, we're not ever called to be solo Christians, so we seek the wisdom of our community, and the community that has our best interests and wants to and walks alongside us and accompanies us in this enduring race towards reuniting fully with God. It's this, when it becomes hurtful and harmful and manipulative, I think that God's not a part of it.
Amen. So as we close out this episode, we invite you to consider what you just heard. What might be stirring in you? Notice it and hold whatever it is gently. Welcome a few deeper than normal breaths. Inhale, breathing in deeply. Exhale, allowing the breath to travel down and out. All the love, my friends. Blessings. Spirit of Sport podcast is made possible by Christian Athlete Circles, a ministry that builds beloved community with and for athletes of all backgrounds. To learn more about our people and our work, follow us on Instagram at Christian Athlete Circles and visit us online at christianathletecircles.org. We greatly appreciate the Center for Contemplative Justice for their support of this ministry and thank Jay Ragsdale for creating our lovely theme music. We also acknowledge that this podcast was recorded in Asheville, North Carolina on Indigenous land. We remember and honor all Indigenous people of the world. We especially recognize the Eastern Band of Cherokee, whose land that we now occupy in this region was systematically taken from them, and who are still present and making home on this land today. We acknowledge that no one person or organization is perfect and ask for your help in calling us to improve our service as instruments of justice and peace for all people in today's world. To this end, please feel free to submit any comments and feedback on how we can better serve you. Christian Athlete Circles seeks to build up beloved community, takes up the work of dismantling systemic oppression manifested in all isms and phobias, and joins in the equitable repairing and healing of our world. May we always remember that the earth does not belong to us, that we belong to the earth as equal and uniquely gifted parts of creation. Thanks for listening and supporting our work.